Hey everyone, we're back at it again with another YouTube video. No, okay, I'm sorry. Let me freaking get serious. Today we're back at it again with another report. We're going to be focusing on the root of poverty. I will be reading off of my own personal report. So if you're curious, you can go check it out through the link in my description on YouTube, and there you can go see all of my sources as well. And you're going to want to strap in because this one's a long one, so grab your popcorn and hold on to what's left of your focus. First of all, I just want to say that I have grown up in poverty, and I truly believe that everybody has experienced some form of poverty throughout their lives. Even the most privileged people have experienced some form of poverty, even if it was indirectly. And the issue is people just don't want to face it. People want to make excuses, they want to make justifications, they just don't want to face it. Nobody wants to take accountability. Well, guess what? That's changing. If you live in a developed nation, you have privilege, so you can use it to make this world a better place. I think that the only people who really don't have privilege are people who face direct military occupation and literally can't do anything, or they will genuinely be shot and killed, like Palestinians or Ukrainians or people in these cobalt mines, or like the list can go on and on. Anyways, let's jump right into it. The general causes of poverty stem from a lack of adequate socioeconomic infrastructure, such as, but not limited to, inadequate access to healthcare, water, sanitation, as well as food insecurity, a lack of affordable housing, education, livable job wages, and stable disaster management. But what happens when we take a look at the root cause of the root causes of poverty? First, we're going to dive into the root causes of inadequate healthcare. Of course, to the public, the biggest issue with access to healthcare is unlivable wages and environmental factors. However, healthcare companies and their calculated strategies are not often enough held accountable, despite being the number one cause of inadequate healthcare and insurmountable health insurance costs. The pharmaceutical industry as a whole has extremely corrupt and biased practices which constantly put their profit margins over the needs of the people. For example, healthcare companies favor and actually influence our government officials to pass legislation which puts profit over patient needs, like the Medicare Modernization Act, which requires people to enroll in private insurance plans to receive partial coverage for prescription drugs, or the Ensuring Patient Access and Effective Drug Enforcement Act, which restricted the Drug Enforcement Administration's, the DEA's, ability to seize drug shipments unless they're an imminent threat to public health and safety. The EPAADE Act forces the DEA to inspect the shipments before suspending them, which allows way too much wiggle room for dangerous shipments to go unnoticed. But it boosts profits for the pharmaceutical industry as it's easier than ever to ship highly addictive opioids into the states. Our Congress members actively receive priority funding from pharmaceutical company PACs and employees, which in turn gives pharmaceutical companies a huge say in negotiation over our country's healthcare regulations. Both Republicans and Democrats combined received over $42.5 million in campaign funding from pharmaceutical companies in 2020. This completely takes the focus off of the needs of the people and reallocates it to the interests of big pharma, leading to financially catastrophic policies which only exacerbates poverty. Now let's talk about water sanitation. The main causes of poor water sanitation are pollution from various industries, including but not limited to industrialized agriculture, big pharma, data centers, and the military industrial complex. It's very important to add that the United States military industrial complex is the world's leading contributor to climate change, releasing 3,685 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from 1975 to 2018, according to the University of Birmingham. It's important to understand that the GHGs, the greenhouse gas emissions, not only affect our air quality but pollute our waterways indirectly as well. Our military has designated burn pits in the nations they occupy, which have little to no regulations on what they can burn, leading to the environmental degradation of the area. Our military's carelessness with the catastrophic levels of pollution they manufacture has contributed to environmental pollution, especially affecting our water quality. leading to health issues such as, but not limited to, cancer and respiratory issues, an increased rate of birth defects, and a higher mortality rate worldwide. The Department of Agriculture is another perpetrator of catastrophic pollution levels which affect the health and wellness of the public and environment. In 2022, over 600 million metric tons of greenhouse gases were released due to industrialized agricultural methods. According to the Health Food Playbook, the industrial agricultural system contributes to one-third of the world's GHGs. The runoff from the nitrogen and phosphorus, as well as nitrate found in animal feces, both used in fertilizers, and ammonia combined with other chemicals found in pesticide spray, are some of the top contributors to hazardous water, both ground level and underground. Antimicrobial resistant bacteria found in animal feces and pesticides have also been found in our food and even treated drinking water, contributing to antibiotic resistance in humans. The Healthy Food Playbook gives guides on the resources available that help you monitor the pollution levels in your area, as well as sources on how you can get involved in your community. And of course, there are many other causes for environmental degradation which ultimately lead to toxic drinking water, such as unmanaged sewage waste, which oftentimes goes straight back into our environment. But a lack of stable and properly funded water sanitation infrastructure is ultimately why polluted well and tap water goes untreated. The US currently needs $625 billion to go toward a 20-year clean drinking water needs plan, along with $9.2 billion for replacing lead pipes and $472.6 billion in sewage and wastewater management, according to the United Nations System Standing Committee on Nutrition. This totals to roughly $1.1608 trillion in water sanitation infrastructure totaled from across the United States. And these costs are so extraordinarily high due to the accumulation of the gross disinvestment and underfunding of key water sanitation infrastructure, especially in segregated areas. According to the Construction Dive, in 2024, the U.S. water utility sector experienced a $110 billion funding gap, and this gap could increase to roughly $194 billion by 2030. The Trump administration currently has the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act on hold, which only exacerbates the investment gap into water sanitation infrastructure across the country. Dan Buckley, the chairman for the National Utilities Contractors Association, said, quote, "We need more federal investment. The scale of this crisis demands it. As Congress debates the future of federal spending, lawmakers should consider reallocating more dollars to these essential programs. Furthermore, we need to focus on food insecurity. The leading contributor of food insecurity, according to Science Insights, is armed conflict, which not only destroys land and pollutes the air, but destabilizes entire communities and has international ripple effects on the already unstable global food market. As prices go up due to armed conflict, countries riddled with poverty such as Yemen, Mexico, Uganda, Congo, etc., are forced to spend over 40% of their paycheck on food or sometimes skip meals altogether. Another aspect of food insecurity is overconsumption and waste, typically in privileged countries where food is thrown out if it doesn't look perfect, among other reasons. Food insecurity, like any other aspect of the poverty chain, is in a domino effect cycle, where places experiencing unrelenting armed conflict, specifically but not limited to Africa, Asia, and Latin America, have a ripple effect on the entire world through inadequate food production and severe economic instability due to the armed conflict which has been imposed upon them by imperialistic countries such as the United States, Russia, Israel, etc. And so on. Let's face the housing crisis, where, according to the National Institute to End Homelessness, 3/4 of households in America qualify for housing assistance but do not receive it due to a lack of federal program funding. According to Georgetown University, social and political barriers such as individual scrutiny of population density, courts and neighborhood associations delaying development through appeals, procedural and environmental challenges, and corporations price gouging developers all make it extremely hard to get affordable housing plans approved. In 2020, the Trump administration rolled back on the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule and imposed opportunity zones, which proved ineffective at introducing affordable housing plans and instead increased funding to areas actively driving low-income families and individuals out, replacing them with wealthier households, aka areas already being gentrified and promoting segregation. Moving on to the root cause for inadequate education. First, public schools, specifically K through 12, are typically funded through property taxes, which means wealthy areas are able to pour more money into resources such as technology, up-to-date books, and infrastructure for their schools, while impoverished communities are not able to meet these state-of-the-art standards, putting those communities at a disadvantage. This also affects how well teachers get paid. So the issue here is inadequate state and federal funding as well as community engagement. Second, the curriculum is out of date and simply wrong at times, typically focused on memorization and not exercising social emotional development, critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving skills. In other words, children are being told what to think while not being allowed to explore how to solve real world problems as well as exercise their abilities to create, expand their minds, and function healthily in society. Schools are also heavily focused on standardized testing, which doesn't encapsulate a child's full cognitive function and development, only how well they memorize the information they're given. Lastly, unlivable job wages directly impact whether a family can afford proper schooling at all. Now, pivoting to unlivable job wages. The federal minimum wage is capped at $7.75, despite legislation having been proposed to the Senate in 2021 to raise it gradually until it met $15 in 2025. The legislation still remains undecided by Congress. The federal minimum wage is the baseline, as some states have raised their minimum wage, though typically at or just above $15. The majority of minimum wage workers work for big corporations rather than small businesses, according to Drexel University. The two leading corporations with the lowest minimum wage in 2024 were Walmart and Amazon, yet their CEOs make over 800 times more than their median workers. CEOs and private shareholders of these corporations are able to afford the best healthcare, fine dining, and million-dollar homes, while minimum wage workers are forced to scrape up pennies just to make ends meet, have to rely on safety net benefits such as SNAP and Social Security to survive, and most face the threat of going homeless due to one mishap. The issue here is very clear, and a wide-known fact that some people actually joke about. The CEOs and private shareholders of the leading corporations employing minimum wage workers are hoarding a majority of the wealth for themselves, enslaving minimum wage workers for their own greedy interests. The federal government also does not care for the health and security of society and accepts bribes from these big corporations, which ultimately influences legislation that favors profitization over livable wages. The living wage is $20 to $26 depending on the state and will continue to rise with inflation. We must get active in our communities and push for living wages in any way we can. Slavery is unacceptable on all levels. Lastly, we must focus on inadequate disaster management. There are many layers that go into effective disaster management, from up-to-date communication and data collection technology, the understanding of indigenous and cultural practices, to cooperation from local authorities, emergency responders, government agencies, non-government sectors, and immediate communities themselves. When one of these branches of management is faulty, it makes the whole system unreliable. The biggest issue we see is the bureaucratic practices of corrupt governmental and non-governmental entities imposing unnecessary hurdles which extend the wait for the approval of disaster management plans. This is usually due to government and private entities wanting to maximize gains and gatekeep information for the sake of competitive profitization. We also have to look at the fact that political beneficiaries will exploit disasters and monetize standing humanitarian work while not even contributing the bare minimum themselves. The solutions here are simple, but due to arrogant impositions from private, state, and federal organizations, the process is made more complex than need be. Communication between communities and emergency responders, as well as balanced resource allocation, is priority. If emergency responders are not able to coordinate with each other to then coordinate with communities to issue evacuation warnings, search for missing people, restore damaged infrastructure, and receive accurate data of the magnitude of the situation, there's no possibility for coordinated management. Another top priority is the respect for and understanding of Indigenous practices already implemented, which help curb the effects of natural disasters. Without the true knowledge of sacred cultures and working with these communities, this will pose even more of a threat to the affected people and environment. This also means, individually, we have to be willing to push for accountability from the state, federal, and private entities that make these communications and resources so hard to obtain because of their sociopathic greed. The socioeconomic welfare of such a developed nation with the largest capacity for balanced resource allocation is not only in the hands of governments and big corporations, but it's also in the hands of each individual to set the bar for what kind of behavior we're willing to accept from leadership and to what extent we're willing to go to for proper representation and liberated socioeconomic development. From the homelessness crisis to water sanitization, you can focus on at least one issue to bring awareness to and push for accountability on. Do what you can to be the change. Your voice matters. You are a person of the society, and so you have influence. So use it. Get educated, stay informed, and do what you can. We need to stand the fuck up. Peace and love.